Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for our recent Convene chat. I'm here today with Mike Siegel and Ashley Rose from Living Security. My name is Cliff Steinhauer. I work with National Cybersecurity Alliance. I think most of you probably know who we are, but just in case, the National Cybersecurity Alliance is America's premier nonprofit cyber education organization working to keep everyone safe online. We just had our most recent Convene event in Clearwater, Florida in March. And of course, Living Security was there presenting and supporting the event. So I'm really happy to welcome you guys back and continue the conversation with today's Convene chats. So I'll hand it over to you, Mike and Ashley.
Thank you, Cliff. Yeah, it's good to see you again. I was in Clearwater with you and hopefully with much of our audience today. And I really just want to reiterate that I had a great opportunity to spend time with a lot of the Convene members and attendees. It was such it's a show where you can connect with people on a personal level and get to know them, get to understand their security programs. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to speak on stage at Convene as well, and received some great feedback afterwards about how Living Security is really trying to lead the market in taking security awareness training and evolving it into the modern age and making it more risk aware, bringing context to a employee engagement program, focusing on the users who truly need certain kind of training and nudges, and perhaps giving those who are hypervigilant the opportunity to take off from that 2 hour training video this time and give them that time back. And as I was interacting with a lot of the Convene attendees, I was hearing directly from them the stories that they were seeing within their own companies, right? How they were engaging with employees in new and creative ways. And I just got a lot of energy out of that experience. The job that people do within security awareness training and in cybersecurity in general is not an easy one, right? This is a tough job. There are high stakes in every enterprise when it comes to protecting digital assets, protecting data, protecting customer information. And I really believe that this is noble work that folks do. And our goal and our mission at Living Security is to help empower and enable these great folks to be able to do that job better and better every single year. And it's a pleasure for me to be part of Living Security. I think a company that is at the forefront of that, to be a colleague of Ashley Rose on this webinar with me, who's a pioneer in this space of HRM. And Ashley, I'd love for you to maybe just spend a moment reflecting on this journey of yours and how we got here with HRM.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And yeah, for those of you who I missed at Convene this time, I believe I'll be at the next one. So looking forward to seeing you all again. Frank, that's a great question, Mike, and it's really well timed. As you know, we're hosting our all hands here in Austin over the next couple of days. And we've actually grown our team by 24% since December of 24. So as I was pulling stats together for the all hands, like that was really incredible to acknowledge. And through that process, I also realized, and I do this every so often, I have to kind of go back to the beginning and retell the story, tell how we got here. And so I've been spending the last few days reflecting on that, and really I'm in awe of what this small, nimble and courageous team has accomplished. But to your point, so when in 2017, when Drew and I set up and pitched our first version of Living Security, we actually had a slide, and I won't share it now. I think I've shared it in the past, but maybe I'll post a LinkedIn post after this. And the vision for Unify was actually spelled out on that very first slide that we ever pitched in 2017, well before this concept of human risk management or Unify existed. But we knew that the way that we were doing things at that time, and still largely today, right, by focusing on compliance alone, not saying compliance isn't important, but doing that alone as the end all be all of a program, and doing it with really very little metrics, very little understanding of whether or not the actual steps that we're taking, the campaigns that we're deploying, the time, the energy that we're spending within our organizations is actually moving the needle to reduce risk and drive culture change. And so I have to say it, but there had to be a better way, right? Like that's where a lot of first ideas and
Yeah.
companies get started. So over the years, as we've transitioned quite a bit. Our focus on the human, though, has never changed. We've always been focused on the human side of cyber. I personally believe it's the last frontier of cybersecurity, and we're uniquely qualified to essentially help organizations move beyond a compliance-only perspective to a human risk management program where they're able to identify, manage, and mitigate cybersecurity risks. So, I think a lot of this culminated even last year when we saw Forrester, rename the category to human risk management. We were named
Yeah.
leaders in this space. One of the things that we really emphasize in understanding where our customers were and where they are and where they're looking to go is the development of that human risk management maturity model, which I know Terry is spoil the surprise. Many of our customers have leveraged to kind of paint a roadmap and be that guiding light to how to take the next step, right? And so that's something that I'm really passionate about is helping the market, helping our opportunities, our customers to understand like we can meet you where you are. And our goal is to help you mature and get better every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's those stories of success that our customers are achieving are just so energizing and rewarding for us too. One of the things Ashley and I did in the first quarter of 2025 is we did like a US roadshow. So we went to, I don't know how many different cities, Ashley, and visited all kinds of customers of Living Security who are on a variety of different tracks of maturity when it comes to HRM, right? Some of these customers of ours have been with us for 6, 7 years, right? They were CyberEscape Online or physical CyberEscape customers and kind of grew with us through training platform and perhaps are now, starting to bring some risk analysis into their employee engagement model. And then other customers were like have been running our Unify HRM product for like over 2 years now. And one in particular stood out to me, very large company out of Chicago. They deployed Unify about a year and a half ago, I think it was, Ashley, and started off with kind of baselining their organization around risk, right? So who are their most risky users? They integrated all kinds of different data feeds into Unify. They broke their employees down into cohorts, right? So certain cohorts had certain types of risk. They identified a specific cohort of contractors that represented an unusually high amount of risk, and these people were fairly susceptible to being attacked. So some of their behaviors would have made them susceptible. They had access to certain kinds of data. If they were breached, that breach would have been very significant. And so they undertook a program of engaging with those individuals in that cohort with very specific kinds of training, specific tailored videos, nudges, discussions with management. They were able to bring in management as being part of the solution. And we went out and visited them in Chicago, and it was 1 year later. And they popped up a slide on the screen that said the before and after, 1 year apart. And it was like dramatic. It was like over a 50 or 60% reduction in risk in that cohort. And the team literally started clapping, right? Because this was a massive success for that team. And then they shared with us, which was amazing, that based upon the success that they had generated with Unify, that team doubled in size over that past year. That they used Unify as part of a business case to essentially add more resources to their security team, to their security awareness and training efforts because of the success that they could quantify through Unify. So I just found that to be incredible. Most security teams are probably thinking like, are we potentially contracting? How do we get more efficient and do more with less people? And here was the inverse response, right? Which was, this is working. We can prove it. Let's put more resources to bear here because we're getting a return.
And that's exactly right. I think companies of all sizes, they're always looking to become more efficient, but they want to invest in the areas and the programs where they're seeing a positive ROI, and then one that can be correlated to business success, right? So if we continue to think about security as a cost center only versus a business enabler, that's where we see the largest amount of contraction. That's where we struggle to get budget, where we struggle to get headcount. And we're, frankly, seeing burnout across the industry. But the minute you can flip that on its head, right, and we start thinking about how does security become a business enabler? And I have many stories, I think we'll probably share some later, around using things like business level scorecards, where we're
Yeah.
actually aligning, right, our what security is trying to get done from a risk management perspective to the business goals, and engaging in those conversations where we're presenting the data and the business is making decisions. Once you can set up that type of cultural change and that type of cultural shift, you'll see more resources being applied to this area of the program. And this example is one, but there's many others.
Yeah. And so you speak of data. Interestingly enough, we contracted with a third-party research firm this past quarter as well, called Scientia. Maybe you want to spend a minute or two talking about some of those results.
Yeah, this was a project I was really excited about. We talked to the firm a few years ago, frankly, when we first launched Unify, our platform, and we had some early adopters coming on, and there's a learning curve, I think, on both sides, right, for both the company as well as the customers, and we realized, like, we're not quite ready to dig in, but I knew that over the last few years, with some tremendous growth, with some new customers added, with many more stories and action plans in place, that there was going to be some really interesting insight that we could glean. So we embarked in this adventure, this kind of data discovery project, and a couple of key stats came out with our first kind of set of analysis. So the first was I asked them, could you look at, like, what level of visibility, how many insights, what sort of percentage of risk coverage can you see with a traditional security awareness and training offering, maybe one of our competitors or somebody that doesn't have Unify, versus what a majority of our customers are seeing? And what the data point that stuck out that was really exciting to me, first, on average, our customers are integrating 10 to 12 various security products on average, which was amazing. We're seeing immense amount of coverage, and that quantified into the result of a 200% increase, or 3 times more visibility than you would typically see with a traditional SET product. And so that was first and foremost. But we're like, great, we can put some stats around visibility. That's something we can take to market. We can talk, and provide sort of reasoning and rationale to increase the amount of integrations you're pulling in to increase your visibility. But the second one, I would say, was even more exciting. We saw, on average, customers that have deployed action plans through the Unified platform have seen as much as a 90% reduction in risk in that cohort that they deployed an action plan against. And that stuck. It wasn't just a point in time change, but it was long lasting. So again, really exciting. And I'll use this time to do a little plug. We're going to be releasing a full report, thought leadership report, with Scientia here in the coming months. And for those that are on the webinar, you think about that as like a double click into the Verizon DBIR. So there's some really interesting statistics, industry benchmarks that we're going to be able to share with you.
Yeah, it's so compelling. I've been in security for almost 25 years now, and I'll tell you, ROI is not a metric that you commonly hear in a cyber context. It's just very difficult to describe the value that a security tool or security program provides, in terms of the return on investment. And to be able to do that with a quantifiable reduction in risk, or a quantifiable increase in visibility to risk that can then be mitigated within the platform, I think that's a really compelling story. And this is one of the themes of my presentation at Convene in Clearwater. The other theme, which will transition us now into the next part of this webinar, was around breaking down the data silos that we often find within our security industry. And I've been guilty of this, having been on the vendor side for this long, and having created some of these categories like DLP and web security and insider threat and others. We find that there are many, many tools deployed throughout an organization today. If some of you were at the RSA conference in San Francisco 2 weeks ago, Ashley and I were there with our team. But as you know, there are literally over 1,000 vendors in cybersecurity today. And so the average enterprise has 10, 12, 15 20 different tools deployed. Each one is producing data, right? And there is value coming out of these tools. What we believe needs to happen in security in general is to share that data, to integrate that data, to be able to identify unique insights that you could not have seen otherwise if you were just looking at it through the lens of one particular tool. And that's where human risk management really shines. Because if you can ingest all of this disparate data, you can then look at it through the context of a human. You now have the basis by which you can go and actually take action. You can engage with the employee, and you can invoke potentially policy changes or mitigations within the rest of your IT security stack that you already own. So, with that in mind, I want to introduce to the call here our good friend Terry Smith. And Terry Smith is with a company called Blackbaud. Terry, welcome to the call. Terry is the program director for security awareness within Blackbaud. He was at Clearwater with us. He's been a Living Security customer now for several years. And honestly, Terry, I just had a great time talking with you and getting to know you in Clearwater. You were telling stories, you were making everyone laugh. And I just thought there'd be no one better than you to come and join us on this call today and talk about your experiences. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Mike. What a great opportunity to talk about our journey with Living Security. So as you mentioned, we're a fan of yours, we're a customer. We've been using your training materials for a couple of years now. Fun quick story. Last year, I used your training materials for the Born Secure training, and it was fantastic. Our team loved it. So much so that for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it ends with a ... to be continued. So that was our training, our annual security training that we put out last year. And I had over 300 people within our organization respond to me, well, how does it end? How does it end? So we ended up putting out the second portion of it, or the conclusion of it. So when do you get a chance to have people ask you and beg you for more security training? So kudos to you guys, good job. So that was, that worked out really well for us. So I'm a big fan in that sense. Now, let's talk about our journey. You guys have mentioned journey a couple of times, and that's what it's been with our journey with Unify. So how do you want to go?
Let's get into it, Terry. So first of all, maybe just a quick about Blackbaud. Tell everyone about your company.
Sure. So as Mike said, I'm our program director for security awareness. We've been around for about 40 years. We're the world's largest software as a service company for social good. So if you guys have heard of Giving Tuesday, that is us. We get to open the stock market each year on Giving Tuesday, ring the bell, bang the gavel, and we've done over $5 billion through our system for social good around the world. It's an amazing company with an incredible mission and purpose.
Awesome. That is amazing. And I'm just so honored to be partnered with you, Terry, in your journey. And we want to keep your company secure and safe and your employees vigilant so you can continue to do the good work that you do. So thank you for that very nice compliment about how engaging our security awareness training is. Obviously, that's where the company's origins came from, as Ashley and Drew said, there's got to be a better way to actually get people to pay attention to this stuff. And then it became, you know what, we should be, being more specific. Let's contextually understand who needs training and maybe who doesn't, or what kind of training or when, and let's measure that. And sure enough, here we are with Unify. So can you maybe talk a little bit about, what was your security awareness program like prior to starting with HRM? Like, what did it look like?
Sure. When I came on board, it was about 2.5 years ago, and our security awareness program was very much a check the box kind of approach. We wanted to make sure that we check the box for compliance, make sure everybody got through security awareness training. I switched over from our previous security awareness training company to you guys. That was intentional. And people have loved it. So from a check the box standpoint, one of the things that when I interviewed for the position, I said, how do you know whether or not Terry's doing a good job? You have no idea, other than do people like me, and that's questionable. I've been based on some of my fishing expeditions, I've been asked to be fired 3 times now. So, but based on that, I wanted to be held accountable, and that was important for me in my experience with the company. Is I want to be held accountable in terms of saying, is Terry doing the right thing? Are we moving the needle? Are we making ourselves more secure, or are we just checking the box? And I felt
Yeah.
like we could do more than just check the box for compliance.
Absolutely.
There's a
Yeah. And that idea of measuring impact, of
Mhm.
knowing if it's working. It's one thing just to it's there's value in knowing that, just whether you're doing a good job. There's also value in course correcting along the way, right?
Yeah.
And if I can measure what's working and what's not, that data is going to inform the next step I take. And I love that you're thinking that way. So, rewind the clock before using Unify and HRM. Like, what did it look like for you when it came to identifying or viewing risk within the organization? How would you go about doing that, or were you able to do that well?
Well, that's an excellent question. From a standpoint of being able to look at that, um, we didn't have a good way of measuring anything that we were doing as far as the culture goes, as far as the security culture goes. We tried, as most companies do, sending out surveys and stuff like that, and usually get about 2 or 3%. And you can't really trust that information either, because people are very reluctant to give you truth in some of those surveys. But we had a very disparate approach, a very siloed approach to it. So
Yeah.
we had our threat detection group, we had our data loss prevention group, we had people combing through SIMS data to try to pull data out of that and create spreadsheets. It was a very disparate approach to it. So we had all this information in our systems, but we didn't have a good way of looking at it and a good way of pulling it together and making sense of it, or is what I like to call insights. So I think of Unify as my insights group.
Why we called it Unify Insights. So we must have been onto something there, Terry. Um, so one of the things I loved about your story is well, first I would say like your love for the mission.
Mhm.
When you talked about like why did you want to move forward, it's because you wanted to be held accountable, right? You wanted to be able to like show or prove the value and the change that you were making. I think ultimately that starts with mission alignment, which is exactly what we had said before. How are we connecting security to the business? And when you have people in roles like yourself, Terry, that are so aligned to the mission that you can't do anything else but try to drive things ahead, I think it becomes very easy. But what was that aha moment? Like when you said, okay, now is the time, now we're ready, we should take the next step. Like, can you think back to what that was for you? Like what clicked that now is the time to go from SAT to HRM?
Well, when we looked at it and we were looking at how we were reporting all this stuff to the board members, to the executive group, we had all these disparate reports, and there was a fair bit of overlap going on within the reports, which told me a lot of things. It told me that we're siloed. First of all, we're doing a lot of overlapping things, so we have tools probably that we may want to evaluate and determine whether or not we need a coupling of tools or we should get rid of some tools. In addition to that, just the inability for us to have kind of a vision or an insight about what is going on within our organization, it took a lot more digging to pull those insights together. And that's one of the things about Unify that we get in what I refer to as a single pane of glass. Now you have to play around with it to make it work the way you need it to work, and we can talk about that journey as well. But what I found is that all these disparate pieces we were able to pull together through API connections, and now we can look at it in a very different way. So you want to be thinking about how you want to set this up. What are gaps in your systems? Where are areas that you feel like you may not have visibility into, so to speak? For example, when people are terminated, their own volition or reduction in force, which also makes me sad. But when people are terminated, they have 2 weeks, 2 weeks left generally or so. That's one of the riskiest moments in life for them, especially if they're trying to exfiltrate data. And so living security in the Unify gives us that insight because we've connected that to our Workday. And so our Workday sends notification to Unify. It says, hey, these are early leavers, so to speak. And so we put those into a bucket and we can actually track that and say, are they practicing risky behaviors? Are they trying to change things? Are they trying to send large spreadsheets out of our organization? Not that we don't see that from our DLP, but now we have it, in insights, and we can, through Unify, watch this and track that behavior for those people that are leaving. So there's so many different things that we've seen from it, and it's just been amazing for us.
Yeah, those are great examples, and I love that we're seeing such a wide variety of use cases that you guys have deployed. I know that it's been a journey to get there, and there's more to
Mhm.
come. which we'll get to as well. So it sounds to me, right, reflecting, it sounds like you guys tried to do some of this internally, and then you like ran into some pain. And the pain was in data manipulation and connection and trying to get like the story, right? Not just have disparate data points, but actually a story that's meaningful and actionable. And it was like maybe through that painful process that you yourself said, all right, enough's enough. It's time to move forward. But what I can tell you, and I would, I put out an assumption, a hypothesis that many of those on the call are saying, okay, I'm bought in, like I'm ready, I'm feeling the pain, but maybe they're struggling to get their internal teams engaged. So, Terry, was everybody on board like day zero, or what did that process look like for
Absolutely
Blackbot?
not. Absolutely not. It was met with a lot of consternation. So there was a big concern about Big Brother watching. Even though our acceptable use policy says if you're on our systems, you're using our laptops, our platform, you have no right to privacy, so to speak. That's all part of our InfoSec security policy as well as our acceptable use. Even though we say that, we're a very touchy-feely organization. That's how we are. If you think about the nature of what we do, social good, we're going to be very touchy-feely, and I appreciate that and I respect that. But it also, from a cybersecurity standpoint, can be a bit of a challenge. So our groups that were on board, our CISO was on board right away. He loves the idea, loves being able to hold me accountable. So that's always a challenge. Some of our other groups, though, were a little bit more skeptical. We had our data privacy group was very skeptical at first because we had lots of discussions with Unify and Steve and company, as you probably remember, Ashley, where we had questions about, well, where's this data going? How long are you keeping it? What are you doing with it? Are we giving you metadata? On and on and on. And so we did a full-on security review. So we had 3 of our security architects. Actually, 2 of them didn't want Unify. I'll be honest with you. They're like, I just don't like this idea. This is too, this doesn't fit us, and so on and so forth. And they were very concerned about the data privacy piece of it. And I love that about them, and I respect that because they keep us safe. And so after we went through this big ordeal and big review, they were like, I love this. This is fantastic. You guys have done a great job. I feel like
That was going to be my follow-up. Did we win them over? And it sounds
yes,
like we did.
indeed. So at the end, they were our biggest champions. And so we utilized them to start talking to our technology group, because that's one of the teams that had some issues, they had some concerns. Our biggest detractor was HR, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But our technology group was also very concerned because our technology group is our designing and developing our platform. They live on the cutting edge. I call it the bleeding edge. And so they're always pushing the envelope with regards to what they can do, what they can get away with, all that sort of stuff, because under the guise of development. And so they had some consternation as well. They were very concerned about, well, what are you doing with this data? Why are we being monitored? All kinds of questions. And I respect that, but we utilized our security architects to help us with that discussion process. And so we got them on board. And then we got to the touchy-feely piece, which was HR. So that's a 2-part process with regards to that. So as our journey has gone, HR has been a bit of a challenge because they feel like it's very Big Brother, and they didn't want us sending out notifications because there's so many wonderful things within Unify where you can automate stuff. And when somebody's doing bad behavior, you can instantly send them a nudge and say, hey, don't do that, kind of thing. And that feels very Big Brotherish to some people, and I understand that. So our HR group is very adamant that we don't do that. So I'm still working with them, but the thing that we did do is we turned it into a positive story and said, you know what, we've got a lot of great people doing some amazing things in terms of being vigilant. And so if you look at the scoring that Unify gives you 2 really good metrics with respect to vigilance of people doing good things. So for example, we feed our fish information into Unify, and if people report fish, that goes into Unify as well. Well, that's a positive feather in their cap, so to speak. And so when we see people doing positive things, like they change their password, these are all behaviors that they have control over. And that was something we looked at and we configured on our own. But these positive behaviors gave them a better score. And that gives, everybody wants to see their score go up, which is always a good thing. So we turned this into a positive story with our HR in terms of saying, well, instead of looking at it as a negative, here's the carrot stick thing, let's give an attaboy to those people. So we set up a lens, which is part of the unified process, where we could see all the people that were doing positive things. And so what I do is I reach out on a monthly basis and I give them an attaboy. Hey, you've been doing a great job. I noticed you've been updating your password. You change it sooner than what we require to change it. You're reporting fish, both real and simulations, so on and so forth, and several other things. So I reach out to them and I give them that information, and that has been a really positive thing. And our HR is coming on board with the fact that, hey, you're getting all these insights from Unify, and you're telling all these people. And I always make sure I copy HR just because I want to see. I'm trying to build that relationship with them in terms of now we're doing a positive. Let's work on the corrected behavior side of it as well. And so it's been a really good story in that sense.
Speaking of stories, and you just shared a lot there. We all appreciate that, and we're getting some stuff in the chat. If you guys have questions, feel free to also drop things in Q&A. But Terry, you were gracious enough to actually share one of the outcome reports that you had from Unify. So I'm gonna put this into a slideshow here and share screen. So maybe you can talk about like what this process looked like put some make this tangible. So let me share my screen here, and then
and to be clear, this is a snapshot out of Unify for Blackbaud. And Terry, a lot of the insights that you were just describing can kind of be summarized here, but please, let's double click a little bit if we can.
Absolutely. So when we first started with Unify way back in October, where we got the system kind of up and running, just started collecting data and that sort of stuff. But we had sufficient data of roughly 90 days or so at that point in time, which was our baseline. So we took that as our baseline, and you can see that there's an HR. The HRI is the Human Risk Index score. And we were pretty risky. If you look at the 320, the lower the score, the more risky you are. And so as you see, when we went through the October training, which is October Awareness Month, we all go through that. We did the training. They asked for more training, as I mentioned earlier, with the conclusion of the Born Secure training. That was fantastic. And in between, I've been doing several different nudges. I've been creating Friday Funnies, doing all kinds of different things as far as keeping up with current trends and threats and stuff, and just trying to make our team more secure. We've got about 4,000 people across the world that we're dealing with, so we're hitting many time zones and stuff. But we've watched our HRI score go from 320 to 435 to 716, which means we're somewhat vigilant. Now, we have a ways to go. And do I think that we're going to be super vigilant, put on our capes and be superheroes? No, but we've got a great story to tell, and this is a story that I tell our executive leadership team as to when they ask me, well, why Unify? Is it really giving us what we need? And I bring this to them and share this story, and they're like, yeah, now we can see it quantifiable within this program, and this is our metrics. And there's many other metrics that we use as well. One of the things I do is I know the executives are very competitive by nature. That's just who they are.
Yeah.
And so I break down our company within their organizations, and I pit them against each other in a very positive way. And I say, hey, your organization is not as vigilant as your organization. What are you going to do about it? And they ask me, well, Terry, what can I do about it? So I start to teach them about here are the behaviors that your people can do that can change that dynamic. And so we've seen them grow in terms of being competitive with each other, which is a nice way of getting us all in that competitive spirit.
Absolutely. And so like some of the things that I know that you're doing, obviously, you're quantifying the effects of your awareness program, right? Now you can see how people are engaging with training and whether that's having an impact. You have the ability to look at potentially suspicious behavior if people are leaving the company. You've got risky individuals that you can provide corrective behavior training to.
Mostly salespeople.
Mostly salespeople. You're looking at fish reporting, right? You're looking at MFA password vigilance. You're looking at risky website usage. These are all attributes that come together and help you look at kind of a 360-degree view of individuals. And as the director of awareness training, you have the ability to go and do something actively about that.
Yes.
But you're not the only one, right? So as I spoke about earlier about breaking down the silos within security teams, there are other aspects of Blackbaud's security team who
Mhm.
also get value from this as well. Can you talk a little about that and how you're breaking down those silos internally?
So I didn't want this just to be an adjunct to our training. I didn't want it to be Terry measuring and adding more training to people. That wasn't, that wasn't the sole purpose of it. So I wanted this to be a tool because it brings things together in a single pane of glass, so to speak. I wanted this to be a tool for our security team to be able to use. So our threat detection, our TDR team, threat detection and response, they utilize this because instead of combing through SIM data and other data to try to pull things together, they can see it in a single pane of glass. So I give them access to the system. We've done some training with them. They've created their own lenses, and they can see things now on different actions and behaviors that they would like to monitor more closely. And so they create their own lenses to track that. One of the things that they do is create a lens where they track it across 90 days and just see, what are we doing? What's the trajectory of this? Are we doing things right or wrong? We can also see when we make adjustments to our security parameters within our company, how does that affect? And so they're seeing those threat detection response. Our data loss prevention team also utilizes it. I mentioned for those people that are leaving the company, that's a big filter for them because they want to see, are people trying to basically steal data from us?
Yeah.
Luckily, we don't get too much of it, but people try on occasion. I think sometimes it's just people trying to save their personal pictures and stuff, and that gets caught in the mix. But it does happen. So those are two teams that specifically use it. Now we're also going to let our HR team utilize it so they can see some positive things and they can send out information about, hey, as a company, we're doing this. So we're working on our reporting. We're not complete, it's still a journey for us. We're not completely done with how we want to report, but we're working on our reporting for our board members as to how Unified gives us insights to this stuff, and so that we can track and say, here we had 30 people, the top 30 people that were risky, and we've tracked them over 90 days where I give them training, I reach out to them, I talk to them, what's happening with them, and we can track their behavior. So that's one of the things that our board members are very interested in seeing is what are we doing with the most risky people?
Absolutely. And I think you had mentioned to me as well that your DLP team didn't have access to like Workday data.
Correct.
And so triggering a DLP policy or creating a cohort that potentially is going to get more attention, there was a gap there, right? Prior to Unify.
Yep, absolutely. So now one of the things that we got out of this was since Workday feeds into our unified platform, they can also see the connection points as far as leadership chain, which they didn't have access to before. And so now they can go up the chain from a risky behavior standpoint, from a data loss prevention. So when somebody leaves, they can work down that chain and say, how might this impact that executive?
So we had a question in the chat, and I think we're actually really close. You were, I think, about to kind of lean in here as we're talking about reporting. So Dana was asking about, who has visibility into these reports? Are they public? Is it just leadership? And so I know we're spending quite a bit of time right now. You mentioned the board has questions. You mentioned going up and down the chain. So how are you thinking about what's next to kind of expand workforce engagement and visibility with the information, with the metrics that Unify is providing you?
Well, one of the things that we do, and we're still structuring this, so this is a work in progress for us. We're designing the lenses for the executive leadership team, so they can have, when you create a lens within Unify, you can secure it so that's what they see. They don't see everything else, so they see their, maybe their organization. And so within that organization, they can dive down. And we've created lenses for them that they can see their entire organization, dive down, see who's risky. They can also dive down into personal scorecards and say, oh, so-and-so is risky, why? And so they can actually dive down in that scorecard actually tells you, oh, so-and-so has been going to nefarious websites or trying to, they get blocked, but that also registers. So-and-so has been trying to change their security settings. for example, on their laptop. Once again, we're pretty good about blocking that, but the fact that they tried it is also a factor for us. So things like that where they can actually see the behavior. And so they can see their organization, they can see individuals, they can see teams within that. So it's really been beneficial in that sense. So as we create lenses, they have insight to their team and what they can do to encourage them to practice better behavior.
Absolutely. And I think to kind of expand upon that, I know, we've got to win over HR and we're on our way, but a lot of our additional customers are using the platform to do employee scorecards. And so I always said that like we really won the game when our awareness training and human risk management becomes an employee benefit. And the minute that HR like signs off on that and says, hey, this is actually beneficial for our team members, and this is a selling point, the value proposition that we can take into the hiring process, like that's when we know, we're fully there, right? And we're going to get there with you, Terry. I know we will. So
we have customers, Ashley, who like gamify their scorecards. It's like a competitive, fun-spirited thing that they do within their culture. And one of them ran into the deputy CISO at RSA, very large organization, like 80,000 employees, got scorecards that same day. She was excited to say that she was on a text chain with her CISO and her whole team, bragging about her score being higher than theirs and vice versa. And so like that's great, right? Now we're taking something that in the past maybe was thought of as a chore or compliance and I got to take this training again, to this sense of like shared responsibility. We're all in this together. We all have a role to play in elevating the security posture of our company, and we're excited to see the results as they come through. That's got to be a very rewarding feeling, and I'm sure that's something that you're looking forward to seeing within your team as well.
Well, I've been sharing scorecards with a select group, just so that we can see this. And when I give them their scorecard, they always ask me, well, what can I do about it? What can I do to make it better? So I specifically pick out some people that are not doing well. That helps. And so, but I do that intentionally to say, here's things that you can do. And they actually get competitive with it. And so what they want to, they want to make sure that they're doing the right things from being vigilant standpoint. And so they get excited when they see their score go from their behavior index score go from like a 64 to a 71. And they're seeing it move up because of their actions that they can control.
Amazing. So we're coming up on time in a minute or two. Terry, this has been incredible. Your experience and the stories you tell are really inspiring. And I imagine that there are people in the audience today who are not yet on this realm of the maturity curve and want to get there and aspire to build a program like you've built. And I'm sure that they're gaining confidence by the minute as they're hearing how you've done that. So as we wrap up, Ashley, I thought maybe you might be able to close this out. Like, where do we go from here? You've been a pioneer in this space. You've helped bring HRM into reality. But honestly, we're probably still in the early days. There's vision ahead. So, maybe share a little bit of your thoughts on where you think we take this in the quarters and years ahead.
We are certainly still in the early innings, and I think Terry and I are pretty aligned on what the future holds. Him and I were talking. We've got to get him to the beach, so it's a few years out still. But but in a more serious note, I think like a lot of organizations, or hopefully almost all, right? We're thinking about how do we leverage the power of AI, right, to automate a lot of the work that frankly our teams are doing. And I know you guys have a small teams and a large staff. And so first and foremost, what are those tactical tasks that we can really like take off your plate? I talk a lot about like automating the things that can be easily automating so you can actually allow the people behind the programs to be strategic, to understand and influence culture, right? To have those conversations that are really going to move the needle, to start gaining buy-in and strategic alignment with the business. And so, so those are some of the areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about. So obviously really excited about the potential that we're seeing with agentic AI, especially with some of those early task automation. I saw a question in the chat around languages, right? We know that multinational organizations like this can be a real challenge, and not just a challenge, but a time and a money suck. And so that's another area that I'm really excited, not only in being able to personalize from a language or a localization perspective, but how do we get hyper personalized in like the content and the styles that are really going to engage and educate people and get them to make better decisions. And so really excited about being able to apply some of the intelligence that we're able to glean through the Unify engine and actually use that to create hyper personalized content, phishing campaigns, and the ability to engage with people in a more meaningful way, maybe through some sort of chat interface. And then something I spend a lot of time about is just thinking about expanding our integrations. I talked about earlier, we have 10 to 12 different integrations that we're seeing on average per customer, but there's so much more intelligence out there that can help us all be smarter. The attack surface is growing substantially. And so some of the things we're looking at right now are identifying things like shadow AI in the environment. And we know that many teams are thinking about this, but what's unique about human risk management and what we're able to do is that we have the connection point to your users. And so instead of just blocking innovation and shutting it down, how do we actually see who's using different models and for what purpose, and actually redirect them to sanctioned and approved models so they can continue to innovate, but do that in a secure way? So we have a lot more to accomplish. There's a very large roadmap. We have a market that we still need to capture and help to progress and mature, much like Terry. And then, eventually I know my job is done when Terry's on a beach, but Blackbot is fully secure. So that's what we're working towards.
I plan on retiring in a few years. That's the future.
Yes, and we're gonna help you go out on a very, very high note, Terry. And again, thank you for joining us here today. Your story is inspirational. Cliff, appreciate you hosting this, and for the entire Convene community. We look forward to meeting all of you again at the next Convene and really engaging and helping this industry move forward.
Awesome talk. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. That was super engaging. I see a lot of positive comments in the chat, and I know everybody's walking away with something from this one. So thank you so very much once again for the support and for everyone for being here. And we will close it out and talk to you guys next time. Thanks for being here.
All the best. Goodbye, everybody.
Opportunity.
Thank you.
Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye, guys.